He's not running for president yet, but he's got a pretty cool resume and can captivate a room with his stories of his time in the FBI and as chair of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. Whether he gets into the GOP primary is yet to be determined, but this morning, former Congressman Mike Rogers is our guest on Close Up. Thanks for joining us, Congressman.
Adam, thanks for having me.
Drop this thing here. Having served in the FBI, what's your reaction to hearing a greater and greater segment of, Republican voices say it's time to get rid of the agency altogether?
Yeah, that should be a non-starter. Just 2 years ago, we lost 2 FBI agents serving a warrant on child pornography, a child pornography suspect. We have to keep in perspective what they do and what some of the leadership problems of the FBI and not try to mush them together. Every 10 hours, the FBI opens a new Chinese espionage case. You want the FBI. They're the only agency in the United States today that can work those domestic espionage cases. And the complicated, like I did, organized crime cases in Chicago, they're hard, they're complicated, it takes more time, and it takes focus. You don't want to eliminate all of those things. So I think that is, A, it's not helpful to the trust, the public trust of the agency, and B, but there are some things the FBI needs to do to get its act together. And as I told some of my former colleagues, you have to earn the public trust. It shouldn't be just given to you, and you shouldn't expect it. You have to earn it. They have some earning yet to do to get back to, I think, the public trusting who they are and what they're doing.
With your knowledge, do you think at the upper echelons there a kind of culture has developed or ethos of kind of like a Praetorian Guard, like we enforce the law and we protect the law in some way, and that they see certain politicians on both sides and maybe they've crossed the line a bit?
I do, and I was a big defender of the FBI when they first came out, and when the shooting started about, is the FBI right or wrong on the Russian investigation and other things. And when you see the misconduct by the number of agents, that something's wrong, and that tells me there's a cultural problem that they have to deal with, and that's a leadership problem at the FBI. Remember, the 98% of the agents who are scattered around the country, including here in New Hampshire, who are fighting crime and doing the real work of the FBI, they're not a part of that. This happens to be a Washington, D.C. Thing that has crept into the psyche of the agents that are working at the top echelon of the FBI. That needs to be fixed, and I think they need to fix that soon. And the next president needs to take really decisive action on that to regain that public trust in a really important institution in America.
You've been a leading voice sounding the alarm about China and Chinese influence around the globe. What's your perspective on U.S. climate policy vis-a-vis China, even as the West tries to address a pressing issue? Are there concerns there that the U.S. has to do it in a way and the West has to do it in a way that doesn't disadvantage it against China?
Oh, absolutely. And here's what I tell my environmentalist friends is, listen, if you want to get to that more carbon-free economy, it's going to take time. Don't try to do it overnight or you'll kill thousands of jobs. You'll take away the livelihoods of millions of Americans. There's a better way to do this. I do believe, I'm a technology guy. I've been in technology the last five years. There's technologies on the cusp of making it available. And we need to be smart about how we do this, because if we do not, remember, 90% roughly of all the processing that happens that goes into the electrification of a car happens in China. So if you artificially mandate that everybody's going to be driving a very expensive electric car by 2035, it presents a couple of problems. One, you've given our adversary the ability to turn things off on us when they want to, number one. And number two, we don't have an electric grid that can support it. So let's be smart about how we do this. We have to friendshore and reshore our supply chains. We actually are going to have to process and mine the materials we need for electrification here in the United States. All of that has to happen and can happen. And by the way, where is the most environmentally friendly way to extract minerals from the ground? It happens in the United States of America. If you see reports now of where the Chinese have gone into Guinea and other places, they've destroyed fisheries, water tables, right? They don't have the same moral compass when it comes to protecting the environment that the United States does. My argument is, let's get it here, we need to be independent of China as we go forward on climate change. And the other good part of this is we absolutely can do this. That's the exciting part, and we'll get there. And matter of fact, even on the mandate of the cars, why don't we start where pollution is the worst, go into the cities, help them electrify all the fleet vehicles versus telling somebody in the upper part of New Hampshire where you get a lot of snow and it's cold, that drains the battery, you have to have an electric car. Maybe it doesn't work for you. Maybe a combustion engine works there. Let's do more electrification in the big cities that have the big pollution problem. You'll get to where we need to go faster without disadvantaging the United States and the average worker who's just trying to put food on their table.
You chaired the House Select Committee on Intelligence from 2011 to 2015 as social media was really gaining a foothold and becoming pervasive in America. To what extent does China leverage that access that we've all given them through these smartphones here? It used to be the spies, you know, the Russian spies were clunky and couldn't figure out how to get into America and access our culture. Now we've let them in through our phones. How much do they leverage that?
Completely. And it's not just China. China is, I think, the most pervasive because they have a platform called TikTok. And people say, well, I'm not too worried about them stealing my information. Well, they will steal your information. And by the way, if that app is running in the back of your phone, they're getting all your contacts, all that other information. Trust me, that's going to Beijing as well. But what TikTok allows them to do is influence our kids, influence a generation of Americans to think differently about communist China versus the United States and how you feel about your country. There's a reason people are feeling less confident, less excited about the future of the United States, because they're getting bombarded with messages as subtle as they are from adversaries like China, like Russia. By the way, Iran's getting in on the gig now too, because they know it's an easy way to run an influence operation here in the United States. And you're so right. Well, matter of fact, back in the 60s, Russian intelligence agents would actually print off flyers and try to take them to black churches and white extremist groups and try to cause friction and chaos in the United States. They don't have to do any of that anymore. They don't even have to be here. You can run that operation from Moscow now and create the same kind of angst in America. This is a troubling trend that we are going to have to deal with, and we're going to have to deal with soon. We can't wait 2, 4, 6 years to get this done.
You mentioned Moscow. When Donald Trump was here in New Hampshire, he said he could end the war in Ukraine with a phone call between himself, Putin, and Zelensky. What's your reaction to that?
I'm not sure he understands what's happening on the ground. That would concern me a little bit. I'm glad he would make a phone call, but that's not likely going to get done. We are in for a long haul. I think the way the administration tried to get Ukraine not to lose versus try to push the Russians back, I think really has cost us tremendously. And so now the Russians are dug in. It's pride of a nation, and we shouldn't underestimate the pride of the Russian people on what's happening there for all the other things you hear. And this is a President Putin who controls 10 layers down in all the state apparatus. Some notion that it's weak is wrong. He wants to be there. He wants to show that he can win. He wants to test his army further. I don't see a quick answer here, and I don't think a phone call will do it. This is going to be long, unfortunately, because we've allowed this thing to dig in. Again, I wish a phone call would work. Love the bravado. I don't think it's going to work.
Quickly, as we wrap up here, what goes into your decision-making process in terms of whether you get into this race?
We're trying to, kind of see voters and talk to voters. Are you ready for hearing a sober, realistic understanding of what the risk is from China and what's going to happen to the next generation of Americans, and what our solution set is? Are you ready for a creative solution set that's positive and optimistic and get America ready? If people come together and say yes, I think that could lead to an interesting decision in the months ahead.
All right, we'll see you out there in New Hampshire. And of course, you can watch Conversation with the Candidate with Representative Rogers coming up on Friday. We appreciate that time that you've given us. So thank you.
Thanks, Adam.